The Australian energy producer claims Australia's offshore environmental regulation system is broken and threatening our economy and climate change targets. Joining me now is the organisation's Chief Executive, Samantha McCulloch. Samantha, thanks so much for your time. Are you referencing there the Woodside decision of last week? What's the problem with it?
Good morning, Laura. Thanks for having me. Indeed, we have an offshore regulatory system that frankly is not working at the moment, and we saw this, the latest development last week, where yet again an environmental approval that had been granted by the regulator was withdrawn or overturned. We simply can't be in a situation where billions of dollars are being invested and yet the approvals, when they're granted, are frankly not worth the paper they're written on. We need to fix this system. This goes to not just billions of dollars of investment, but actually to our energy security. This is something all Australians should be concerned about. This is new gas supply that's needed for Australian households, Australian industry, but it's also playing such a key role in terms of energy security in our region.
Well, is that the end of it for Woodside, though? Because if I could break it down very simply, and it's not that simple, basically it was found that they didn't do proper consultation with some of the Indigenous groups. Does it just come down to that? Surely that's something that Woodside could come back and challenge.
So, Laura, what we have at the moment is a lack of clarity in terms of those consultation requirements. You'll note the judgment last week, there was no criticism of Woodside, and of course the industry has been consulting extensively and meaningfully with traditional owners for decades. And we're not seeking any changes that would water this down, but what we do need is clarity on what those requirements are. And the ambiguity is evident in the fact that actually the regulator did grant the approval for the environmental plan, but then the Federal Court, of course, overturned that approval. So again, the industry is calling for certainty around those regulations so that these projects can move forward. There's billions of dollars of investment on the cards here, investment in new supply, but it's also going broader now. So these are projects that are being tied up related to decommissioning, projects that are key for our energy transition, investments in carbon capture and storage. Yeah. There's more than 40 environmental plans currently before the regulator. Some of them have been sitting there since last year. We need an approvals process that is robust, that's efficient, and that can provide the certainty for investment.
Okay, when you say clarity and a simplified process, what are you talking about exactly? Because whenever we do a story like this, to be honest, Sam, it comes back and then the Environment Minister will say, well, we've, put questions or questions have been submitted by the governing body and then they haven't come back, and that's why it takes so long, because there's so much back and forth. So what exactly, in a perfect world, do you want to see?
So right now the requirements around consultation are extensive and covering an enormous geographical footprint for these projects. We need to have a consultation process that allows that meaningful engagement with traditional owner groups and more broadly the community, but that doesn't place undue requirements on projects. And again, these are projects at the moment, it's the oil and gas industry, that includes decommissioning, that includes carbon capture and storage projects. Yeah. But this is the same regulatory framework that offshore wind will need to operate in. And if we are going to transition our energy system consistent with net zero, the clock is ticking. We need to be able to move forward with these investments. Gas will be critical, but so will these other projects.
Sam, so when it comes to consultation, just give me an example. You said often with the consultation process, the geographical area in which a company needs to consult with can be quite large. So therefore, does that slow it down? Because I imagine you have to get to many hundreds of people, if not more than that. Is that what slows down the process? And is it
Yes.
is there too many loopholes in all of that when it comes to consultation? That a court can look at, like it did with Woodside, and say, oh, well, that wasn't done properly, because it all needs to be documented, and one person can make a complaint and therefore it throws it all off the rails. Is that inarticulately expressed by me how it all works?
No, you're right, Laura, that You know, the consultation requirements right now, firstly, they're not clear, but they're requiring, in some cases, projects that might be operating offshore Victoria in the Otway, potentially having to consult with relevant people in southeast Queensland.
Right.
So it's
Why?
just, you know, the footprint is enormous. So this
That
is
doesn't
going
really
to
make sense, and I'm sure it won't make
potential
sense to our
impacts.
viewers. Why?
No, because we're looking at if there was a potential, for example, oil spill and everything, and it wasn't contained, and everything that could go wrong went wrong, would there be potential that there would be an impact broader than, you know, the local area?
Wow.
These are very, very, very unlikely events, extremely unlikely events. And of course,
how
the industry
long?
has.
And so that consultation would then take months, if not years, right?
The consultation is taking months. This is costing projects in the industry, you know, millions of dollars in terms of the new requirements, trying to ensure meaningful and extensive consultation. So again, the industry wants meaningful and extensive consultation, but it's got to be managed in a way that does, at the end of the process, provide certainty, and that when the regulator grants an approval, that's meaningful and that investment can occur. So, I mean, Australians wouldn't tolerate a situation where, you know, you're given approval, say, to build a house, and you're midway through construction and suddenly that approval is withdrawn. That's the situation we're facing in the offshore investment environment at the moment. And how do you commit billions of dollars to these projects that are providing essential energy for Australia, for our regional partners, when you don't have that confidence in the approval system?
Yeah, that analogy totally makes sense, and I'm sure it will to a lot of people. Do you think fossil fuels and renewables are treated equally under the law when it comes to consultation and everything like that?
Well, we would seek and expect consistent requirements for offshore projects, whether that's offshore wind, whether that's carbon capture and storage project, whether that's a new oil and gas development. But across the board, we need to recognise the importance of having robust regulatory frameworks if we are to enable these investments, if we are to transition for net zero. So again, gas is playing such an important role in terms of supporting Australia's transition. We need this new gas supply for the domestic market. In the case of WA, the Scarborough project is a key new source of supply into the domestic market for the Western Australian households and businesses. The delays to these projects will have knock-on effects for households for reliable and affordable energy. And if the government is concerned about cost of living pressures, then it should be focused on getting these approvals or the approval system fixed to allow new supply to come into the market.
Sam, thanks so much for your time. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Laura.